Okay, let's take a look at R.V. Marshall from 1999. This is a case on the treaty rights of the Mi'kmaq people, and the issue in this case is whether the defendant possessed a treaty right to catch and sell fish under the treaties of 1760-61 that exempted him from compliance with the regulations. A little bit of background here. These treaties were really vague. They spoke to only trading within truck houses, and it looked as if the intent of this treaty was to keep the Mi'kmaq people from trading with the enemy. So this defendant was charged and convicted on 3 counts, and this went to the Court of Appeal, and they upheld those convictions. So now it's being examined here in the Supreme Court. So some of the rules that apply to this case, and the main rule extracted from this case is where a right has been granted, there must be more than a mere disappearance of the mechanism created to facilitate the exercise of the right to warrant the conclusion that the right itself is spent or extinguished. So basically with the truck houses disappearing, the Court of Appeals said that this was now an obsolete treaty. Second rule here from the Baker case, which is really referring to how treaties apply using the Sparrow test. So any infringements of the rights guaranteed under the treaty must be justified using the Sparrow test. So is there a valid legislative objective? And if so, then the analysis goes to a consideration of the special trust relationship and responsibility of the government toward the Aboriginal people. There may be more questions here as to whether the infringement was as little as necessary to affect the objective, whether it was fair compensation, and whether the Aboriginal group was consulted. That's, again, from the Baker case. And then another rule from the Baker case here that applies 2 key interpretive principles apply to treaties. First, any ambiguity in the treaty will be resolved in favor of the Aboriginal people. Second, treaties should be interpreted in a manner that maintains the integrity of the Crown, particularly the Crown's fiduciary obligation toward Aboriginal people. These interpretive principles apply equally to the rights protected by treaties. So that's from the Baker. So what this court here said, the majority of the court anyways, said that reading the treaty document as it was and giving deference to that was inconsistent with proper recognition of what the Aboriginal people had gone through, and that looking at this like a contract, that extrinsic evidence would be allowed to fill in ambiguous gaps in a contract. Secondly, there may be historical and cultural context that needs to shine light on some of those terms and eliminate those ambiguities. And then thirdly, where a treaty was concluded orally and afterwards written up by representatives of the Crown, it would be unconscionable for the Crown to ignore those oral terms while relying on the written ones. So they're basically writing in that this was the right to trade. And the dissent in this case makes a fairly good argument. They're saying that this was a big stretch from the words of the treaty. That's my opinion there. Too big of a stretch. So they're saying that it follows from the trial judge's finding that the right to bring goods to trade at truck houses died with the exclusive trade obligation upon which it was premised, and that these treaties did not give the right to trade, basically, that we're just reading too much into it, that the majority is reading too much into it. Nonetheless, that was a minority. The majority said the appeal should be allowed, and an acquittal was entered on all charges. Thank you for watching my video. Please do me a big favor and hit that like button and subscribe to get more videos on law school and NCAA exam prep.